What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's Actuali Podcast and our weekly live stream series, Meaning Making 101, where together we try and make sense of this crazy world and see what we may do to change this world from the inside out. We gotta be that change we wish to see, fam. We can't just keep blaming the outer. We gotta get down to the root, and it's within every single one of us. So thank you guys so much for being here today. Missed you guys the last couple weeks. We have a lot going on in our own lives, as I'm sure you do as well. But I have been able to start uploading some of the old episodes from back when this podcast was audio only and, playing on Apple Podcasts and all those places, And so we're still, on all the podcast networks, but we branched out into YouTube and Twitch and Facebook Live and Rumble and all that. And we wanted to, fill in those of you that haven't gotten to hear some of the old episodes, give you access to those. So there's guided meditations, poetry readings, different interviews, philosophical deep dives. There's all kinds of stuff in there for you guys. So if you like what's happening here, make sure you check us out. Check out some of those old episodes. They're coming to you. I'm going to keep getting a few up every week here as I'm able. So, welcome. This is Meaning Making 101. I'm Chris.
I'm DJ.
Today we are continuing our deep dive into David Bentley Hart's, theologian David Bentley Hart's profound essay, Christ and Nothing, where he considers how Christ may be able to help us in a way that nothing else can in this time of postmodern meaning crisis and nihilism and narcissism and depravity and rampant growing division in our culture. We need all the help we can get, don't we? So thank you guys so much for being here. Once again, if you are with us live, throw down your thoughts and questions in the comments, and we will do our best to keep up with you. And whatever we don't get to on the spot, we will actually cover at the end of this episode. And getting excited to get back into this one. This is such a really powerful essay. And making sure that we are indeed live and streaming. And
the nihilistic postmodern mess of the world. Yeah, it was us Christians' fault. We didn't do it intentionally, but it happened.
It was inadvertent. Yeah. The fight against modern nothingness, it's tricky because Christianity itself did help create it by defeating the old gods and changing the world. Now, Christianity then accidentally cleared the way for today's nihilism, where people reject all higher truths.
Yeah, so. And then the fracturing, and then the fracturing, and then another fracturing, and then the infinite fracturing.
So this makes the call to reject all other gods even more urgent now, because we are led by our baser instincts. Those have become our gods, just self-interest and pleasure and, fleeting.
Well, we've gone past the reject other gods, like your Roman gods or your Greek gods or your pagan gods and all that stuff. And now you have to reject at least gods in function of, the money, the egoic self, the consumption, the stuff.
Yeah.
Things and stuff that we don't realize we worship, but we do. What's the word worship mean? Like worthy of being set aside and praised. Or no, holy is worthy of being set aside, but worship is worthy of praise and reverence, and then you praise and give reverence to it. Well, that's money. That's
whatever is the thing that rules our consciousness the most and is our main primary motivator. It's for a lot of us nowadays, it's, sugary, snack food and,
even identity.
Junk food diets, junk food TV, identity, ego, narcissism.
Well, because the identity, there's all sorts of identities that you can identify with, and then you can
my truth, my morality, that kind of subjective version of morality that we find.
But nowadays. Kind of blaming the Christians for this, but also it's the responsibility of Christians to get us out of this.
And it was an inevitable side effect of Christianity that it would have to go through this process.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned last week, basically, we have to raise Jesus back from the dead again. He raised once, and we have to do it again. Yeah. Because, we killed off all the other gods, and then our God died. Mm-hmm. Nietzsche wasn't wrong in that. We killed God.
Christ was this guy that challenged the existing hierarchies and orders of his time, and he taught us how to question authority and to seek justice and fairness in our societies.
Yeah, I guess it's just because we're questioning it doesn't mean we need to get rid of it outright and be like, well, authority and hierarchy is just because it was tyrannical once, or it is prone to being tyrannical.
No,
It's like,
this is just how Christianity brought this upon itself
Yeah.
as well, because it
Yeah.
helped actually inspire the scientific revolution,
sure.
the hunger for truth
and it's no wonder
and
that
universal knowledge. So we started universities and things.
and it's no wonder that like socialist causes or quote unquote woke causes and stuff like that very much use the language of Christianity for their own
the value
means.
sets of Christianity.
Sure.
Like
Well,
everyone should be equal. Why can't we make
yeah,
everyone equal?
well, it says in the
Yeah.
it says we should be treated equal, and even our own country's
That wasn't a very prevalent
Constitution,
idea
but-
before Christianity came along, though.
No, no.
There's very strict hierarchical systems before Christianity were much more firmly fragmented. You could
Well,
say
good examples like India. India's had a caste system
Yeah,
for so long that they're actually genetically distinct peoples from each other.
dude.
Within the
Wow.
castes. So that's pretty oppressive by Western Christian
modern standards, right?
modern standards. But you can go too far and just be like, well, because there's a hierarchy or there is some sort of authority, it must be bad. It's like, well, there's a hierarchy in nature. You just tend not to really see it because it's so complicated.
Yeah,
You
the
don't
big tree takes most of the nutrients
Yeah.
away from the smaller trees around it.
and crushes it out and takes its sunlight.
Stars do the same thing.
you
yeah.
know so but I don't know, it's a little bit of I guess there's if say I'm going to personalize it, if you're responsible for creating the problem, you're also responsible for finding a solution for it. So in the case
Amen.
of Christianity creating this problem, it's also Christians who need to take up the burden, take up the yoke, and actually make amends for it and fix, and mend what was broken. And I'm not like condemning, Christianity or Christian people or anything. It's just a matter of fact. A led to B led to C killed God. So
Yeah, this is how Christianity recapitulates itself and allows itself to be maintain its relevance through changing eras.
Oh, and also just personal, guys, if you see me scratching, I'm not some sort of crackhead. I just got over having the hives for like a week, so I'm still itchy. So you're going to see me like, don't worry, I'm okay.
Where's that? What is that from? Like heat stroke?
No, it was an allergic reaction to something. I don't know
Okay.
if it's something that I drank at the show or if it was in those, like, if it was a mushroom in the ramen topping stuff that I ate that day before. But I'm staying away from both of them. That thing that I drank, and also I don't do well with mushrooms. So
I see.
yeah. So if you see me scratching, I'm not a crackhead. I'm just itchy.
Hey, no judgment here, brother. So to kind of rehash where we were at previously, this essay, let me break this down. In a world starved for meaning, where ancient pagans danced with fate's tragic beauty, and today's new age wanderers chase self-made vibes like fleeting highs, David Bentley Hart unveils a shocking twist. These paths crumble into isolation or despair, trapping us in cycles of chaos or shallow ego. But imagine a divine love that crashes into history, not as cold logic or even distant myth, but as a living word made flesh, conquering emptiness through raw sacrifice and resurrection, turning our deepest aches into eternal embrace. This isn't just theology. It's the ultimate rebellion against nothingness, beckoning nihilists, skeptics, and seekers alike to discover why only this revelation truly satisfies the soul's cry. Tune in to explore the void and the victory that fills it as we cover David Bentley Hart's essay, Christ and Nothing. So we're going to pick back up where we left off last episode. And I guess just to rehash real quickly, we covered the fight against nothingness, just like we were discussing. It's tricky because Christianity itself inadvertently helped create it. By defeating the old gods, changing the world, Christianity accidentally cleared the way for today's nihilism. This makes that call to reject the gods of our ego, you could say, even more urgent now, and the gods of nothingness. Philosophers like Nietzsche and Heidegger saw that modernity's emptiness as or saw modernity's emptiness as tied to Christianity. Nietzsche thought Christianity weakened noble values, leading to a weak conformist culture. Heidegger saw it as part of a long Western trend of forgetting the mystery of existence, reducing everything to control and technology. Both partly blame Christianity for today's nihilism. That should help catch us up to where we left off. So let's go ahead and jump on in, guys. Y'all ready for this? Let's go.
Christianity, however, was a slave revolt in morality. The cunning of the weak triumphed over the nobility of the strong. The resentment of the many converted the pride of the few into self-torturing guilt. The higher man's distinction between the good and the bad was replaced by the lesser man's spiteful distinction between good and evil, and the tragic wisdom of the Greeks sank beneath the flood of Christianity's pity and pusillanimity. This revolt, joined to an ascetic and sterile devotion to positive fact, would ultimately slay even God. And as a result, we have now entered the age of the last men, whom Nietzsche depicts in terms too close for comfort to the banality, conformity, and self-indulgence of modern mass culture. Heidegger's tale is not as
Let's let that keep going for a minute, though. Anything you want to say on that right quick? All righty, we're going to continue on, fam. Let's roll.
Indulgence of modern mass culture. Heidegger's tale is not as catastrophist, and so emphasizes less Christianity's novelty than its continuity with a nihilism implicit in all Western thought, from at least the time of Plato, which Nietzsche, in his way, also acknowledged. Nihilism, says Heidegger, is born in a forgetfulness of the mystery of being, and in the attempt to capture and master being in artifacts of reason, the chief example, and indeed the prototype of every subsequent apostasy from true ontology, being Plato's ideas. Scandalously to oversimplify his argument, it is, says Heidegger, the history of this nihilistic impulse to reduce being to an object of the intellect, subject to the will, that has brought us at last to the age of technology, for which reality is just so many quanta of power, the world a representation of consciousness, and the earth a mere reserve awaiting exploitation. Technological mastery has become our highest ideal, and our only real model of truth. Christianity, for its part, is not so much a new thing as a prolonged episode within the greater history of nihilism, notable chiefly for having brought part of this history's logic to its consummation by having invented the metaphysical God, the form of all forms, who grounds all of being in himself as absolute efficient cause, and who personifies that cause as total power and will. From this God, in the fullness of time, would be born the modern subject who has usurped God's place. I hope I will be...
Goodness gracious. David Bentley.
Yeah, so another interesting point that this kind of reminds me of is Christianity is responsible for the Enlightenment, for the scientific method taking hold, for the highest levels of education that led to, reasoning. Okay, well, we need to be able to put it next to a ruler, and, it isn't anything unless we can measure it somehow, right? And so then there's a division that happens there between God as encompassing everything in relationship with everything, and
sense of separateness
into what's tangible and what isn't. So the metaphysical God versus a physical reality. Whereas, before in human history, the gods and God were very much real every day in your life, every day. Right. Opposed to now, it's this separate thing. It's the metaphysical. It's out there. It's the woo-woo stuff, to be separated from you. And we saw this also, in the Lutheran rebellion, Martin Luther, the secularization of governments in the state. Essentially, you have the state and the church, opposed to, the church and the community were all one thing throughout almost all of human history.
Yeah.
So
in positing that truth is the highest, we created scientific revolution. We inspired those kinds of movements of universities and the precise measuring of different things.
And the naming of things.
The naming of things.
Which is,
we started to increase the sense of separation.
Yeah.
between ourselves and the sacred.
Well, and the thing is, in Genesis, God told Adam that one of his responsibilities was to name all the creatures and the plants of the earth.
Oh, right.
That was the
That's
very
right.
first
Yeah.
science. What is that? Taxonomy?
Right.
What
Yeah.
creatures are what and how to distinguish them from each other. That was the very start, which says, well, the world is knowable. And then we're like, okay, it's knowable. And now we're going to learn as much as we can about it. And then the things that we can't measure, do they actually exist?
Really? Right.
And does what one of the lines in there got me, but this whole idea of I think, therefore I am. Really? Really? You sure? Sure about that? Would you be if you weren't thinking? Like, is the brain dead person still there
right.
or not? Or,
Yeah.
or maybe it's
Just 'cause
you
your
are, and that's why you
Brain
think.
isn't doing something, you're just sitting here being, doesn't mean you don't exist. That's
So-
right. So Christianity, well, modern, sorry guys if we're disconnecting and reconnecting on you here. It looks like OBS is being funky with
Oh,
us.
yeah.
There it goes, reconnected. Okay, we're back. What's
Okay.
up? Yo, yo, yo.
Yeah.
Okay, not to worry. Yeah, I'm
still paused here a little bit.
we got a bad internet connection here today.
Oh yeah, I was checking my phone, but my phone's got crap internet too.
Hey.
Where we're at, like pretty much
It
all,
is what it is,
Pretty
yeah.
much all of Berkeley County, West Virginia, has the worst cell service, and internet service combined. I think we're probably back up. So
Yeah, I
one
think
thing
we're
that
good.
I found interesting thinking about this just now is we became very, very, very literal about things, through the scientific study and through the world, and to the point where even as Christians, you have the literalist or the actualist Christians, where what happens literally in the Bible is actually exactly what happened, and the Earth is exactly 6,000 whatever years old, and that gives you a problem because if we find proofs that it's not, which I'm not a young Earth Christian at all. But we found proof, and then, well, that shakes people's faith. And then I've seen a lot of people who were raised in that kind of environment just be like, well, screw Christianity, screw God. This is stupid,
That's what happened.
So, it's a good example of the worst harm can come from the best intentions.
Really, truly.
That's one of them wizard rules from the Terry Goodkind books. Not very well written.
Yeah, dude.
But, the first 3 rules were good. The rest of it just turned into a bad romance novel. Set of romance novels. Anyway.
So hopefully we're back in full effect. It looks like, internet connection is awful right now. Look at this.
It's still going on my end.
Okay, now it's picking up.
Yeah.
We're picking back up. Okay. All right. Yo. So, sorry about that, guys. Bear with. Internet connection is not great.
Yeah, it's going in and out and dropping a few words. Sorry, guys.
Maybe I should come in here and bring that.
No, it sounds fine now.
I don't want it happening again, though, so I'm going to bring the kbps a little bit down further.
Yeah, we're still working things out as well. We just revamped our system and got everything as best matched as possible and try to fix the delay issues and all the housekeeping stuff that you got to do.
Right. Work in progress, but we're getting it. Okay, now it looks like it's catching itself back up a little better. Word. Awesome. All right, so now the author, David Bentley Hart here, he does agree with Nietzsche and Heidegger to an extent, but he feels that they missed the real reason that Christianity led to modernity's nihilism. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that now. Let's go ahead and, whoops.
Click, click.
Bow, boom, shakalaka. Here we are. Let's roll. We're rolling?
Would be born the modern subject who has usurped God's place.
Yeah, here we are.
I hope I will be excused both for so cursory a precis and for the mild perversity that causes me to see some merit in both of these stories. Heidegger seems to me obviously correct in regarding modernity's nihilism as the fruition of seeds sown in pagan soil, and Nietzsche also correct to call attention to Christianity's shocking, and for the antique order of noble values, irreparably catastrophic novelty, but neither grasped why he was correct. For indeed Christianity was complicit in the death of antiquity and in the birth of modernity, not because it was an accomplice of the latter, but because it alone in the history of the West was a rejection of an alternative to nihilism's despair, violence, and idolatry of power. As such, Christianity shattered the imposing and enchanting facade behind which nihilism once hid, and thereby, inadvertently, called it forth into the open.
Wow.
That's a
I am
Pandora's
speaking
box right there.
impressionist.
Okay. So that is profound. That's really, really well said.
Let's bring that back up so
Yeah.
everybody can see it.
Yeah. So he's talking here of how Christianity was indeed complicit in the death of antiquity and in the birth of modernity, but not because it was an accomplice of the latter, of modernity, but because it alone in the history of the West was a rejection of an alternative to nihilism's despair, violence, and idolatry of power. So it brought that monster of nihilism, brought Moloch out into the open.
Well, interestingly enough, when he says,
right here. As such, Christianity shattered the imposing and enchanting facade behind which nihilism once hid, and thereby inadvertently called it forth into the open.
So yeah, so the previous religions and their gods were there as a safeguard against nihilism, and it's almost like the gate was broken down, and an alternative safeguard against nihilism, and then it's as if that gate was broken down, or that containment cell was breached and stripped away, and then out crept the monster that is nihilism.
Yeah. Because they were imperfect ways of countering nihilism as well. Nihilism still managed to flourish under some of those systems, but not to the point it does now.
They worked the best that they could for the time that they're in.
Yeah.
Right. Because just like our perception and relationship with God evolves, so do our practices and methods of staving off the madness, the dark primordial beasts. You could think of nihilism as one of those. Every demon has a name, and
dark monsters within us, even,
and has a portfolio of works and legions that work for it. And you could think of them as actual monsters, which helps for telling a story. You can think about them as, relationships, tendencies, behaviors, inevitable as well. Like the story of Pandora's box comes to mind with this. You open up this fantastic box and out falls all the most horrible things in the world, and then battered and bruised in the bottom of the box that did not fly out is hope.
I remember the first time I heard that story as a kid, and it actually deeply disturbed me, because I was like, there's something true about it.
Yeah.
I could tell there's something true about that. And that is a disturbing concept. And that is kind of the world that we live in now, is this Pandora's box was flung wide open, and everything. All of the demons have come out, and they can so easily possess us now.
Well, in the story of Adam and Eve, and Eve and the apple, is very much like the first time this happened in human history, this knowledge of good and evil. Humans, we were good. We were these perfect children in this garden, and then we learned what good and evil is. And, we'd like to say now, yes, it is good to know the difference between good and evil. Actually, we have to, now that we broke open that box, we ate that apple, and we were kicked out.
Yeah. That Adam and Eve story is one of the oldest stories on the planet.
Yeah.
Older than the creation story. They just changed the order in the Bible so that it had this chronological kind of flow to it.
You could think of that
it's an ancient myth that teaches us
well, there's
about
a lot of things.
The bifurcation of our minds, where we started to follow our ego more than that primary grounded stillness of being that is within us all, through which, the awareness through which God sees.
And within
and experiences life.
Within that story, you can also see, the Promethean story as well. You could consider, Prometheus like the snake, or like the serpent. He gave us fire and technology to light the way, but then what did we do? We built weapons. And we started killing each other with it. So, these are stories that have been told over and over and over and over again, that have a certain truism to it that's not an actual, and I don't use the word literal because I'm, literary, but actual. They may not have there might not have actually been genetically an Adam and an Eve, and we're all descendants from that. But the literal allegory for a lot of lessons tied into this one story.
What is
that
being
everybody's
pointed at,
trying to
the concern that's being pointed at in that story is a true, deep concern. And God, how frustrating it is that we are still dealing with fundamentalism and literalism in the Christian religion, because it's something so much more beautiful and deep than a literalist interpretation where you just blindly believe. It's a way of being. And these myths are teaching stories of that are telling us about incredibly deep truths that cannot be expressed any other way but through the vehicle of story, of allegory. You have to use these kinds of mythological metaphors in order to put ourselves in a place where we can comprehend what's being said. Because this is deep, deep stuff. So we're talking about deep truths, but we're taking the sentences literally, where it's actually what is behind the sentence. What is the sentence pointing to?
Yeah. What is this Garden of Eden? Yes, it can be a location, or it could be a state of being, right? Yeah. I like to think of it as the innocence of mankind before mankind really became mankind. Yeah. Back when we were animal. Yeah. We were of the woods and the animals before we stood on top of the hill to see it all and had the overview effect of what the world is and what our position is in that. Yeah. And Adam and Eve is an example of the first humans to do that.
Right. And I'm sure we're pissing off so many Christians right now, guys, but
I
please
piss off everybody.
Bear with us, because Christ himself pissed everybody off. But, you know, when people think that you're supposed to believe in Christ, I believe that you should believe in the way of being that Christ exhibited. You should take him as true. You should take him as being the most honest and perfect representation of the best way a human can operate that we have. So yeah, believe in that. But I don't think that you need to think that he's the one and only Son of God, and by him you're going to make it. No, by living the way that he exhibited and for us, that he embodied for us, is the way that we get to.
I think you're
that
far
heaven
better.
That is within all of us.
You're probably far better off, and I'm a Christian that believes that Jesus Christ was a real person, was God incarnate, and did come back from the dead.
Even atheist historians admit that now.
But I think you'd probably be better off by trying to, if you didn't believe all of that, but still practicing the way that he showed us, right? Than you would be if you were just a Bible thumper who says, oh yeah, no, I believe in Jesus. And you really do believe that he actually existed. He's the Son of God, but you're just a horrible, bitter person that treats people like crap.
100%.
I think that's probably a worse sin.
That's a good way to put it.
Than to be like, well, I'm skeptical. I don't know I wasn't there, I think God still has love and appreciation for the skeptic, and still has love and appreciation for the Bible thumper too. But I think this whole thumping it at people and being like, I'm right and it is this way, but you're still an awful person, kind of misses the point.
Yeah, really, really, really does. And if we're losing audience over that, that's okay, because we are just filtering out the people that aren't ready for this yet. And those of you that are actually here sticking with this, fucking love you guys. Thank you so much. Excuse my language. That's the first F-bomb I think I think
we're after the 20-minute mark, so I think we're good.
Hey, yes. Thank God for that.
Oh, man.
So let's go ahead. Let's jump back in here and let David Bentley Hart continue this breakdown. Give him a little bit of a head start. All right, here we go, fam.
I grant, of something pervasive in the ethos of European antiquity. Was a rejection of an alternative to nihilism's despair, violence, and idolatry of power. As such, Christianity shattered the imposing and enchanting facade behind which nihilism once hid, and thereby, inadvertently, called it forth into the open. I am speaking, impressionistically, I grant, of something pervasive in the ethos of European antiquity, which I would call a kind of glorious sadness.
Ooh.
The great Indo-European mythos from which Western culture sprang was chiefly one of sacrifice. It understood the cosmos as a closed system, a finite totality, within which gods and mortals alike occupied places determined by fate. And this totality was of necessity an economy, a cycle of creation and destruction, oscillating between order and chaos, form and indeterminacy, a great circle of feeding, preserving life through a system of transactions with death. This is the myth of cosmos, of the universe as a precarious equilibrium of contrary forces, which undergirded a sacral practice whose aim was to contain nature's promiscuous violence within religion's orderly violence. Mm. The terrible dynamism of nature had to be both resisted and controlled by rites at once apotropaic, appeasing chaos and rationalizing it within the stability of cult, and economic, recuperating its sacrificial expenditures in the form of divine favor, a numinous power reinforcing the regime that sacrifice served. And this regime was naturally a fixed hierarchy of social power, atop which stood the gods, a little lower kings and nobles, and at the bottom slaves. The order of society, both divine and natural in provenance, was a fixed and yet somehow fragile hierarchy within totality that had to be preserved against the forces that surrounded it, while yet drawing on those forces for its spiritual sustenance. Gods and mortals were bound together by necessity. We fed the gods who required our sacrifices, and they preserved us from the forces they personified and granted us some measure of their power. There was surely an ineradicable nihilism in such an economy, a tragic resignation before fate, followed by a prudential act of cultic salvage for the sake of social and cosmic stability.
True.
As it happens,
Okay, so that's how they dealt with the nihilism of their time, and it was ineradicable because of this self-reinforcing sacrificial game that we were locked into.
Well, it's so
Wow.
it's interesting that he mentioned it's this closed system, right?
Yeah.
This closed system that's oscillating between, the violence of nature and the violence of God, the law of God, and which doesn't fly with me anymore. And maybe I'm a product of the Enlightenment, but it's an infinitely open system, right? And Jesus was the last blood sacrifice, if you're a Christian, that you needed to do. Instead, we are called, our sacrifice now is our everyday sacrifice against our worst natures, planning ahead for our next generations as well. So, you sacrifice the going out with beers and with the boys on the weekend, to maybe put in more hours at work to get a better position, or you sacrifice your sleep and money and physical well-being for your children. So that form of sacrifice, opposed to burnt sacrifices of meat and wheat and oils and other things like that, which were very valuable.
To appease the gods, though, so that you
particularly
could get
with
some measure of favor or protection.
Well, and particularly within a finite ecological system as well. It's like, or
with scarce resources.
There's only so much in this universe.
Yeah.
And it's like the gods were eating our sacrifices.
Yeah, they needed our sacrifices.
They needed our sacrifices, right? Which
not
it has been an idea that's been
omnipowerful beings.
and this has been played with a lot in literature, particularly fiction. That's idea. Like even in Dungeons and Dragons, there's this idea that the gods get their power from the people who worship them and stuff like that. So, but now we move past that finite system into God's infinite love. Now, mind you, not love as an emotion that doesn't exist. The emotions you feel are a bunch of emotions. It's a relationship. Love as a relationship.
Yes. So we went from a necessity of an economy with a cycle of creation and destruction, oscillating between order and chaos, form and indeterminacy, a great circle of feeding and preserving life through a system of transactions with death. So there's this precarious equilibrium of forces in the relationship with the old pagan gods, where we had the sacral practice whose aim was to try and contain nature's promiscuous violence with our religion's kind of own orderly violence. And we just continued having to appease the gods, basically. We were locked into this very nihilistic, tragic resignation before fate, the truth of our reality.
Well, it's interesting, you can look at it,
So we had to do some kind of like savage act for the sake of social and cosmic stability. We're always in this sacrifice relationship with the gods.
And, for various reasons, you've got gods for all different types of things, for, gods for
and that makes sense.
the rain, gods, the gods of the things that are good for you, the gods of the things that are
that
bad,
you don't want.
that you need to appease them so the volcano doesn't explode, so the winter storms don't kill you, but gods of abundance, and fertility, even the word lullaby is Lilith.
Lilith
Lilith be at bay. So
Yes.
we thought Lilith was this character, and Lilith got put into the Christianity sphere much later. And Lilith is, the idea of Lilith is from a few other religions kind of that got mixed in. But the idea was there's this, devouring, bitter anti-mother, if you will, that would come in and kill your kids in the night, right? So you'd sing them these songs to protect them,
Wow.
And still this.
And help them have good dreams instead of nightmarish dreams from when they're haunted by this being.
Remember that one, Jesus loves me, this I know,
Yeah.
for the Bible tells me so. If I die before I wake, I praise the Lord, my soul to take.
Oh, yeah.
Their requests. Like even, in modern Christianity, we still have those remnants of appeasing the old gods that are dangerous. And we
There's
also
old pagan motifs. That's why Martin Shaw talked about how he saw Christianity as the ultimate evolution of paganism.
Sure. Let's not forget, before the Jews were Jews, and before the very first Jew, they were pagans. Before Abraham was Abraham, they were pagans.
They were pagans.
And they worshipped many gods. And then once we got into monotheism, we went down this road, we made demons of everyone else's gods.
Yes. So ancient European culture was built on a sad but glorious view of life as a cycle of sacrifice, where gods and humans were trapped in a system of giving and taking to keep order. This created a rigid society where everyone had a fixed place, and life was about balancing creation and destruction through ritual and sacrifice.
Sure. Yep.
All right,
and that's evident. Like even with the pop culture, looking at like pagan, European paganism, stuff like that, you can see it.
Yeah, you really can.
And it's very close to us in the West because, well, the West created the movies and all that stuff that we all have taken in globally now, and have these these stories. They're stuck with us.
Yeah. All right, fam. So let's jump on back. Here we go.
The word tragic is especially apt here.
I'm going to try and rewind that just a little bit.
As it happens,
here we go.
The word tragic is especially apt here. A sacrificial mythos need not always express itself in slaughter, after all. Attic tragedy, for instance, began as a sacrificial rite. It was performed during the festival of Dionysus, which was a fertility festival, of course, but only because it was also an apotropaic celebration of delirium and death.
True.
The Dionysia was a sacred negotiation with the wild, antinomian cruelty of the god whose violent orgiastic cult had once, so it was believed, gravely imperiled the city. And the hope that prompted the feast was that, if this devastating force could be contained within bright Apollonian forms and propitiated through a ritual carnival of controlled disorder, the polis could survive for another year, its precarious peace intact.
So it's almost like they have a ritual of imitating the violence of the gods.
Actually, yeah, there was I think in that ritual,
to keep them at bay.
It was a bunch of the women that would take the man out into the woods and do him in more than one way.
Whoa.
And then there's, I don't think it's Dionysia, but a Semitic god or a goddess and god combo, where they would have the orgies and they would do that, and then they'd take the offspring that were a result of that, and then they would burn them. And we found the sites of the children being burned. So this is one of those like actual things that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
So
God.
the violence on both ends, the violence of nature, and then the violence of our practices to try to make
appease
order.
the violence of nature.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
geez.
that's one of the reasons.
So like, you like violence? Okay, here's violence. Please don't do any more damage to us. Yeah.
And in the Bible, when you see God call the Jews to exterminate those people, that was for the reason why. It's because it was really
because what
bad.
they were doing was so dark, so evil.
Yeah, and so destructive. So
that makes a kind of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go on and hear a little bit more about this kind of Attic tragedy now. Oh, geez. Wow. Let's go.
The religious could survive for another year, its precarious peace intact. The religious vision from which Attic tragedy emerged was one of the human community as a kind of besieged citadel, preserving itself through the tribute it paid to the powers that both threatened and enlivened it. I can think of no better example of this than that of Antigone, in which the tragic crisis is the result of an insoluble moral conflict between familial piety, a sacred obligation, and the civil duties of kingship, a holy office. Antigone, as a woman, is bound to the Chthonian gods, gods of the dead, so of family and household, and Creon, as king, is bound to Apollo, god of the city, and so both are adhering to sacred obligations. The conflict between them, then, far from involving a tension between the profane and the holy, is a conflict within the divine itself, whose only possible resolution is the death, the sacrifice of the protagonist. Other examples, however, are legion. Necessity's cruel intransigence rules the gods no less than us. Tragedy's great power is simply to reconcile us to this truth, to what must be, and to the violences of the city that keep at bay the greater violence of cosmic or social disorder.
Sacrificing the family for the city, which, you know, the city was necessary because it was your protection within its walls. You had the protection of the king. But if you go too far and you filial piety is the respect for your ancestors and your family. If you go too far and you get rid of that, then you have a tyrant, a totalitarian tyrant.
Yes.
And it consumes everything. It consumes the families, opposed to just enough, you know, like instead of murdering Antigone, you know, or the antagonist in this idea, instead of completely killing that off, it's, you know, just taking from it as much as you need to reinforce the city. So you could think of this literally, actually, as like, say, you know, giving up your sons to the army so they can fight to protect your city, right?
There you go. Yeah.
That's one way you could go about looking at it. And then if it goes too far, well, then give me all your firstborn sons. Yeah, we don't need to protect our city. We're good, but we're going to keep taking them, and we're going to do whatever. We're going to turn them into slaves. We're going to turn them into whatever. And
yeah, because this will appease the gods now.
Yeah, or something like that. So,
wow. So ancient Greek tragedies like the story of Antigone reflect this worldview. They show life as a struggle between conflicting duties, family versus city, for instance, that could only be resolved through death or sacrifice. And these stories taught people to accept fate and the need for order, even if it meant suffering. Okay, so it served its purpose for its time, like you were saying earlier.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, we're imperfect creatures.
We're
We're
doing the best we
perfectly
can, aren't we?
imperfect creatures trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're still here with our capacities for such evil and violence shows that we're actually doing a pretty good job.
Feels like that, doesn't it?
Which, hey, don't fall into nihilism. We're actually doing pretty good as a species. I know we're not the oldest species, but you know, we've been capable of destroying ourselves multiple times over for a while. So
Truth.
you know, and we haven't yet.
Yeah. It's a miracle that we're still here. It's been over half a century since we invented nukes, and now between us and Russia alone, we have enough nukes to irradiate every inch of this planet like 50 times over. Well, it's insane.
Frankly, even back during the Mongol,
we haven't done it yet.
During the Mongol Empire, they if they really wanted to, they probably could have destroyed the whole world in their time too.
Yeah.
Cutting off a trade, taking out all the traders. Well, one of the things that led to the Dark Age in Europe were when Islam took over, they allowed the pirates just to go crazy in the Mediterranean, so we couldn't get any goods that we used to have, and then the supply networks completely fell apart, and they went from Bath in Britain. It's called Bath because there's a bunch of Roman baths, and then they went to the place where they didn't even have running water anymore because of this. So like we had many times we could have destroyed ourselves, and we didn't.
Something, something to be said about that.
And that's without the acts of God, like, Sodom and Gomorrah, and, which was probably some type of volcanic reaction, something that happened, but still, nature can destroy us too. If the sun sneezes in the wrong direction, we're done.
Dude, yeah, right? Yeah, we just catch one good solar flare, and that's it.
We're doing pretty good walking this tightrope that we got going on.
Boy, that's like what humans specialize at, is skirting the precipice, skating on the very edge. And all you have to do is see an Olympic gymnast or an ice skater or Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or something like that in a flow state playing. Yeah,
those guys that just stick themselves to cliffs without any ropes. They're not Billy Goats, but they do it. That's what humans are doing. We're scaling this supposedly unpassable cliff face with really no protection,
making possible what was once impossible.
We do that through ideas and dreams.
Yeah.
Before we had the first nuclear sub, there was 40,000 leagues under the sea.
Right.
And they literally described in there a nuclear reactor.
That's unreal, man.
Yeah.
So cool. Artists are always one step ahead, man. So
you could say that comes from the divine.
I would say so. I think it all comes from the divine, and artists at their best are trying to be a clear channel for that truth to express through whatever truth is now apparent and relevant to the time
Mm-hmm.
that you find yourself in. Alrighty, so jumping back to David Bentley Hart's Christ and Nothing essay. Let's go.
The city that keep at bay the greater violence of cosmic or social disorder. Nor does one require extraordinarily penetrating insight to see how the shadow of this mythos falls across the philosophical schools of antiquity. To risk a generalization even more reckless than those I have already made, from the time of the pre-Socratics, all the great speculative and moral systems of the pagan world were in varying degrees confined to this totality, to either its innermost mechanisms or outermost boundaries. Rarely did any of them catch even a glimpse of what might lie beyond such a world, and none could conceive of reality, except as a kind of strife between order and disorder, within which a sacrificial economy held all forces in tension. This is true even of Platonism, with its inextirpable dualism, its dialectic of change and the changeless, or of limit and the infinite, and its equation of truth with eidetic abstraction. The world, for all its beauty, is the realm of fallen vision, separated by a great charismos from the realm of immutable reality. It is...
Well, so I noticed that we're still losing some words. So can we take a half a second and bring up OBS and that one setting, that look forward setting? Could we turn that off?
Try that.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're still trying to optimize everything, and we got a bad internet connection here.
We're gonna do it
So
while we're live.
Yeah. So
Okay, let's get rid of look ahead.
Well,
Applied.
yeah.
Got it.
while he's doing that,
Should I bring us all the way down to 5,000 kbps?
Yeah,
you
why not?
think? Let's go ahead and do that too.
in
Let
the-
us know what the quality looks like, if our audio is actually lining up with our movement of our mouths.
So when we did the Vervaeke 50-part lecture series, he spoke about, the what are the dual cosmos model. There's this light, there's this level of reality, and then there's the next one, and there was flaws in that, right? Because it's not this or that, but a transcending through and constantly opening up and reframing.
Yeah.
That seems like we're going through. We don't exist in a two-system model. It's an ever evolving system model, at least the way I see it.
There's a constant calibration that seems to have to occur
Now-
for us to be in alignment with actuality.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get stuck in that type of thought, even in the material world, because there are certain things that are, like 2 or 3 systems. The American government, we got 3 branches. We've got the judges, we got those who judges who interpret the law, those who write the law, and then a guy who and his agencies underneath of him that enforce the law. Right, so we have 3. So you could say, okay, well then there's 3 things in the cosmos. But it's like, well, we're very limited as human creatures, so our government, the best that we can do it, say, is these 3 different things that have their own things that they all handle and help check in. But if you have a constantly growing system, if you span humanity out as long as it can possibly go, you're going to see that it's going to be shaping, evolving, maybe collapsing down, and then expanding out, and then growing, and a growing system. In nature, it isn't, 2 things, other than alive and not alive. But it's this. There's the plants, there's animals, there's things that are almost kind of like plants but aren't really plants, the funguses. Then there's the relationships that they have with each other that are all tangled up into them. Like your body is mostly made up of other things that aren't human.
Bacteria.
Your bacteria, your viruses, the funguses that are all over your skin. And they're all networked and growing and sometimes getting out of balance with each other and then getting back in balance.
Made of trillions of proteins that have become animate and somehow function as one holistic thing, in a single organism, which is insane.
Yeah, it's not
crazy.
Yeah, and it's not the body or the cell. You could think of the cell as as the concrete world, and then you could think of the body as like the metaphysical world, but it's not actually that.
Yeah.
It's things get together and then they create the tissues, and the tissues create the organs, and the organs get together and they create the body, and then the brain does this thing and gets driven. And then what drives the brain? Well, it's the mind. Well, what drives the mind is and then so it's much more. We seem to live in a reality that's way more advanced than the 2-world model.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But that's all we had at that time. The way we could understand.
That's the best way that we could adapt to our to reality as we saw it,
Yeah.
as we understood it.
So
Yeah, true that, man. Let's let Mr. David continue on now.
I think you can pin that thing that you have.
I don't know because I
pinnable?
got it full screen. You know, I don't know if I
okay.
can. That would be interesting if I could actually do that. There might
I'll try
be
to
a
figure
way.
that out in the future.
Yeah. Right, here we go, fam. Let's go. Jumping.
Separated by a great charismos from the realm of immutable reality. It is true of Aristotle too, the dialectic of act and potency that for sublunary beings is inseparable from decay and death, or the scale of essences by which all things, especially various classes of persons, are assigned their places in the natural and social order. Stoicism offers an obvious example, a vision of the universe as a fated, eternally repeated divine and cosmic history. A world in which finite forms must constantly perish simply in order to make room for others, and which in its entirety is always consumed in a final ekpyrosis, which makes a sacrificial pyre, so to speak, of the whole universe. And Neoplatonism furnishes the most poignant example, inasmuch as its monism merely inverts earlier Platonism's dualism and only magnifies the melancholy. Not only is the mutable world separated from its divine principle, the One, by intervals of emanation that descend in ever greater alienation from their source, but because the highest truth is the secret identity between the human mind and the One, the labor of philosophy is one of escape. All multiplicity, change, particularity, every feature of the living world is not only accidental to this formless identity, but a kind of falsehood. And to recover the truth that dwells within, one must detach oneself from what lies without, including the sundry incidentals of one's individual existence. Truth is oblivion of the flesh, a pure nothingness, to attain which one must sacrifice the world.
True.
Escapism. That's interesting. You know, the goal of philosophy is to be able to escape this material, flawed world, which I can see that, but there seems something very wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's
The
not a matter of
embrace.
embracing and incorporating and
Yes.
well, even optimizing yourself, because you are physical. You're simultaneously a physical and a spiritual being, not either or, but both. And I don't really think, at least while you're a fleshy body, you can escape from the body.
You can't, but you can find positive ways to integrate the lesser or better or worse angels of our nature.
You can escape the suffering.
The monster can be a noble servant for protection rather than rageful, uncontrolled side of ourselves that comes out when we get angry.
Or you can escape the tyranny of the suffering. Like, you don't let it control you. You don't let the things that make you suffer be your gods. Because what is a god but something that controls you, right?
Yeah, that controls you. Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
And you can't, no matter how philosophical you get, I don't think you can just escape from that and escape from the suffering. There's been a lot of different practices that have tried to do that with, varying degrees of success, but still never total escape. Like even in, Buddhism, the highest thing you can reach in life is that perfect whatever, but nobody really got there. You better believe while they're, whoever was the closest still, it's like, my ass hurts sitting on this floor still. Like it's okay. It's okay. It is what it is, but it still hurts.
There's no salve for the wrongness in the world or any kind of forgiveness or mercy for one's past mistakes, and the embrace, the sense of embrace that you get from a figure like Christ being at the figurehead. Ancient philosophies like Plato or Aristotle's were also shaped as the ancient pagan religions by this idea of a world caught between order and chaos. They saw reality as a tense balance where everything had its place, and truth was about accepting this structure, not escaping it. Even the deepest philosophies couldn't imagine a world beyond this system.
So acceptance versus escape, but in a way, that's almost trying.
And that's Neoplatonism. That's what Neoplatonism tried to bring, but they're still thinking in terms of dualism.
But you're
still separate from the source,
trapped and still trying to escape from it.
Exactly.
Again, it's.
And what you resist persists seems to be what happens there.
Yeah, but on the other end, also certain things have. You have to resist your urges. Whether they be sexual, violence, gluttonous. All these things. But in a healthy way, because you You can't run from them.
Well, the healthy way, it's just like when Buckminster Fuller said that you can never escape an existing system by resisting it. You're just going to make it stronger. You have to create a new system that makes the existing one obsolete. You find a new way instead of resisting. You find a way to embrace that we are imperfect, and you hold to something that is higher than those imperfections.
You have to transframe it. You have to, go outside the framing and create a new framing. And usually that, whether we like it or not, does incorporate the original framing, but now the framing's larger and bigger. Like our understanding of the universe has become wider, but we still sing the lullabies to our children. We still have all these practices from much, much, much older frames of reference.
So I can transcend this need to resist what is like the lesser beings of my nature, but I really can I can transcend it by, rather than resisting, embracing a higher way that allows me to supersede. So I can notice even the part of oneself that resists, and I hold to an even higher standard and embrace this loving higher standard that forgives even the side of the self that is trying to resist and continues to kind of reconsecrate, make strong again that thing it's resisting against by admitting its reality and almost like injecting power back into it every time we put our attention on it. I don't want it. I don't want that thing. That thing becomes bigger in our reality, in our consciousness. But there's love and unconditionality and a transcendent source from which we all spring that we can align ourselves with, commune with, and co-create with, and as. And if that becomes our new orientation, resistance isn't even an issue anymore. You have something bigger that is beyond anything that one would resist. It's a new mode of operation.
And careful attention to things, I think, is important. Like there's a kid's book, I forget what it's called, but basically this little boy wakes up one day and finds this little like cat-sized dragon. Like, oh, there's this dragon, and this dragon's engaging and playful. And he goes downstairs and like, Mom, there's a little dragon. And the mother's just like, nah, dragons are real, it can't be. And then the dragon gets bigger. And every time it's denied, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it runs off with the freaking house. Until they realize, yes, there is this dragon, there is this problem. It needs to be paid attention to, and then it'll shrink as well. So but that is a delicate awareness, attention, opposed to
seen with love instead of fear.
Yeah, and also not necessarily feeding the dragon, which like any troubles that you have, if you avoid them, they tend to get bigger and worse.
Yeah, you can't resist the reality. That makes it bigger.
If there's a problem in your spiritual system or your governing system, and you just ignore it, it's going to get bigger and it's going to get worse, right? Yeah. And then if you resist and fight against it, opposed to trying to reframe it, it's going to get bigger and it's going to get worse.
And that's where you create the new system.
Ignoring it or trying to crush it down is going to it's just going to make the dragon bigger, and it's going to end up running off.
Rather than resist, you accept its reality, and then you take the mode that supersedes the need to.
It's cramping.
Oh, geez. I was going to say, man, I thought you were about to fall off the chair there. I was like, is there a dragon in the house?
Nah, I just got problems. I'm itchy. I'm cramping. Yeah.
Being a human is tough, man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's jump back in, guys. David Bentley Hart's essay, Christ and Nothing. Let's go.
Of the flesh, a pure nothingness to attain which one must sacrifice the world. In any event, the purpose behind these indefensibly broad pronouncements, however elliptically pursued, is to aid in recalling how shatteringly subversive Christianity was of so many of the certitudes of the world it entered, and how profoundly its exclusive fidelity to the God of Christ transformed that world. This is, of course, no more than we should expect if we take the New Testament's paschal triumphalism to heart. Now is the judgment of this world. Now will the prince of this world be cast out. John 12:31. I have overcome the world. John 16:33. He is far above all principality and power, and might and dominion, and all things are put under his feet. Ephesians 1:21-22. Having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Colossians 2:15. He led captivity captive. Ephesians 4:8, and so on. Still, we can largely absorb Scripture's talk of the defeat of the devil, the angels of the nations, and the powers of the air, and yet fail to recognize how radically the Gospels reinterpreted, or as Nietzsche would say, transvalued, everything in the light of Easter. The example of the...
Interesting. I'm setting us up for that. But yeah, sorry. But Christianity, of course, completely changed that ancient worldview, teaching that Jesus defeated evil and death. It broke the old cycle of sacrifice and necessity. Jesus defeated evil and death. The New Testament's message was that the world belongs to Christ, who overturned the old gods and their tragic rules, offering a new vision of freedom and grace.
Yeah, so the symbology of Christ being crucified and getting weaker and weaker and weaker. The devil saw that, and and mind you, the devil, or Satan, or Lucifer, the snake, that originally, well, we were responsible for our original sin, but was the facilitator of that, being like, here, eat the apple, came at Jesus' weakest moment. And then when he died, he went to hell, basically fought the evil, and came back and crushed the head of that serpent, which is, has been prophesized. So basically rescuing us from our initial original sin.
Original sin.
So, to my Christian friends out there, and to those who don't know Christianity, it's, well, we don't have to worry about original sin, because when Jesus died and came back, he crushed the head of the serpent that helped us that helped us commit the original sin
In the first place.
and, and he went down
process we had to go through, I think.
and at his weakest is when the devil came to strike and got his butt whipped.
Yeah.
And Jesus went into hell and then came back and proved, actually, no, he's not just the God of men. He is the God of all men and all the worlds and all the universes, including
Unreal.
everything in hell. And that was
Mm-hmm.
prophesized earlier by Solomon. Solomon stated in not his grimoire, but basically his biography, who was to come. Because there was an angel you would invoke for every demon. There was an angel that you could say, like Gabriel, come and help deal with this one, and you and this one, all these other things. But then there will be one that comes that will be the only name, once he comes, that you need to utter, deal with all the devils and all the problems. Right. So these are ideas that have been leading up and built upon for thousands and thousands of years up to Jesus, and then past. So this isn't just some cultish story that came out of nowhere that some guy made up. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history from all around the world converging into one turning point in time. Crazy.
True.
Yeah, that had a lot of power, and humans being humans, we made a mess of it. And if you've read the Old Testament, it's nothing but the Jews going around and making a covenant, messing up, and God being like, okay, do it again, and then messing up again, and messing up again, and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's a story of humans, and the all-loving Creator. You have to have a loving Creator that's going to watch us keep messing up over and over and over again, and be like, yeah, I knew you were going to do that, and I love you anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that is the radical flip of the script that nobody could have seen coming, and that's why it was so revolutionary for the world. Once the ideas that Christ embodied were put forth in the New Testament, everything changed forever. And now we are in the situation we find ourselves in because Christianity has brought to surface nihilism is no longer hidden behind some veil that is kind of kept swept under the rug. Now it has kind of formed itself into the giant marshmallow man or something. It's out there.
And we are definitely in a spiritual battle.
Yeah, Marshmallow Man is too light. I mean, we're talking more like Moloch.
Well, I forget what book.
The god of nothingness, like we showed in the last episode with the never-ending story, the nothing.
But I forget which gospel exactly said this, but Matthew, I don't know. One of the wise guys that hung around Jesus was asked by Jesus to go gather his swords, and he's like, well, I've got these two, and Jesus says, that's enough. One of these swords is for, yes, our physical fights that you need to fight to survive and, keep from being oppressed and killed. But then there's the one of the spirits, the spirit world, yet again using a dual world mythology to get a point across, because at that point of time we were still stuck in this dual world end. But we are now battling this Lovecraftian beast of nihilism that wants to consume, and you can't save it. You know why we don't pray for the devil? Because the devil doesn't want to be saved and it hates you. So you can take that further. People, super Marxist people and the super crazy, bitter nihilist people and all that stuff, they don't want to be saved.
No.
And you can't just save them by, now, mind you, always tell the good word and behave well, because maybe they can come over. But frankly, this is the spiritual battle. And we saw it, in World War II. There was no saving the Nazis. They didn't want to be saved and they hated you. Yeah. So there's something to be said about that. Nihilism, it hates you. Nihilism is a hateful idea. Well, nothing matters. And what it's going to do, it's going to make you bitter. It's going to make you do horrible things.
Yeah. It's crazy how the nihilistically, or those that have been consumed with nihilism among us, are so self-righteous and headstrong about what they think is right, because to them, what's right is completely subjective. There's no ultimate transcendent source of goodness or anything that we should operate ourselves by. It's actually personal. It's like my truth. It's what I believe is good.
Well, and also then, what...
why be pissed about anything if it's all subjective?
Or what is right is what is powerful, and how much power can you get?
That's the real story.
The modern day activists won't admit it.
It's a lust for power. That's why everything is power dynamics to them.
Yeah.
They do not include things like love.
Yeah, well, that's why, they can look at the world
their ontology.
As oppressed versus oppressor, and
think that's all there is to it.
Instead of being like, hey, maybe we shouldn't oppress people, it's like, well, no, now we want the oppressor to be the oppressed, and we want the oppressors to be oppressed by the oppressed.
Right. Yeah.
Which is kind of like, I think we should get past that will to power stage.
Really, I'm with you.
Will is important, power is also important, but there's wisdom and there's love that we're kind of leaving out of there, and not the emotion love, the relationship love.
Yep. Amen to that. Let's see where our time is sitting at now.
We are
about at 1:10. Yeah. Let's go ahead and wind down with some good news roundup.
Right.
So we're about halfway through this essay now, guys, and we'll be able to probably finish it in the next couple of episodes here. So,
and now that it's not so freaking hot and I don't feel like I'm dying from being in the heat, I should be here next week.
Dude, it's been intense.
Oh, yeah. 3 gallons of water a day, man. Woo!
So here's some hilarious good news for you all. Years after she saved a magpie, it returns the favor, saving her life after she fell from a window. So I won't say hilarious so much as surprising, but this is a cool story. When Sandy Gillard fell from a 2-story window, the impact knocked the senior citizen unconscious, a state that may have become permanent if not for the intervention of a very small, very unlikely hero. Lightly tapping on her head, a bird named Jellybean roused its former caregiver enough that she could call her husband, who arrived in time to telephone emergency services and save her life. The story makes it clear why the English culture honors magpies.
Another reason why is because if you make an enemy of a magpie, you're going to have problems. They don't forget.
Interesting, man. They're tuned into us somehow. The fall happened in 2020 in the town of Esperance, in Western Australia's remote southeastern corner, where Gillard, then 68 years old, had cared for sick, wounded, or abandoned animals all her life. 3 years before her accident, a minuscule magpie was brought to her home by someone who found it on the ground, unable to fly after it had fallen out of a tree. Already possessing a rich experience in nursing birds back to health, Gillard took in the nestling and named her Jellybean. For months, she grew up alongside Gillard and her family, a single flock of nestmates. She played with my grandson, Gillard told ABC News Australia, explaining that the magpie remained in the neighborhood after learning to fly and find food for herself. She would sit on the veranda or whatever and knock on the door until I would come out and say hello. Gillard said that she has no memory of the 2020 fall. Landing on a cement driveway, she cracked her skull and dislocated her right arm violently. I woke up to this little sound of purring and something tapping me on the forehead, Gillard said. Having been saved from a fall by Sandy, Gillard, or it was time. What the heck?
Having been saved from a fall by Sandy Gillard, it was time for Jellybean to return the favor.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Ads that didn't come up.
Yeah. Paramedics arrived and brought her to a heliport where she was flown to the hospital and stabilized. Doctors later told her that if she had lain in that state much longer, she wouldn't be here today. That's incredible. What the heck? Go ahead, Jellybean. Thank you.
So it's interesting. Animals will come to humans for help. Instinctually, they'll know. And then really smart animals will also help other animals and help humans. So I wonder if there's a general caring capacity that comes with intelligence.
Mm-hmm. There's got to be.
Maybe intelligence and knowledge of good and evil isn't all bad.
No. There's animals that come to us for help all the time. Yeah. And it's even animals that wouldn't typically want to have anything to do with us or even sometimes predatory towards us. We'll have a young one that's trapped somehow on like a fence or something, and then they'll go to a human and be like, hey, could you please help save my cub?
Yeah, and then there's, like this magpie, but, I've seen it in other circumstances where, you'll have really smart, like birds or other animals that actually care about helping something else when they see that it's injured.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't necessarily know what that is because you think,
it's a survival instinct,
yeah.
For a social species to keep itself alive, to look out for one another.
Yeah. And birds are funny, like particularly the social birds. I was house sitting for my stepmom, and they have a Pidgey, and we finally bonded and leaving the cage open. And even when she wasn't sure about me and really didn't like me, she would still come down to hang out. And she'd test me and start pecking, very softly. I can touch you, but you can't touch me. Then eventually got to my hair and did all this stuff. And now, after a few days of doing it, we're good. And I can actually call her name and hear her go, huh. So I don't know. Weird, cute, intelligent creatures. Birds are weird though.
Very strange. Yeah.
I prefer mammals, but it's
birds.
Cool.
Well, birds are just friggin' dinosaurs that are still around.
Yeah, when you're laying on the couch and you got this bird just eyeballing you directly over your face, looking down on you. It's please don't peck my eyeballs out.
I used to be much bigger than you.
Yeah,
I used to be able to eat you.
Yeah, all right. Give me long enough, I still will be able to.
So here's another little good piece of good news. 10,000 young coral grown in just weeks by a new portable spawning lab in the Maldives. A mobile coral spawning system has been trialed with scintillating success as 10,000 juvenile corals were grown by local operators. It represents not only a major hope that island nations can abate the loss of coral reefs, but also that the spawning system's $1.5 million grant investment was well spent and that an expansion and production of the technology could be well warranted. So that's exciting. Co-developed by Australian Institute of Marine Science, AIMS, and Maldives Marine Research Institute, Reef Seed is a shipping container-sized portable seaside spawning laboratory for coral. Designed to allow local marine scientists anywhere in the world to spawn and grow coral for reef restoration in weeks rather than months, and to operate without external power sources or the need for divers. The Reef Seed received $1.5 million from the G20 Coral Research and Development Accelerator program. This is awesome because our sea life is dying off rapidly, so this will help tremendously.
One caveat, though, there's a whole lot of, Great Barrier Reefs and all these other things, look at all this bleaching, but then they don't show you a few years later after it's gone through its bleaching cycle, it all comes back, and now there's greater biodiversity because of this living dying cycle. Now, mind you, there is a lot of dead zones that are popping up because of poisoning and other stuff.
Plastic islands floating in.
But we do, I want to state this. Like being stewards of the earth, we still have to be very, very careful.
And we get a
because
little
this could be
Pollyannish sometimes.
Yeah, this could be a great idea, and I actually think it is a great idea because
it's brilliant.
Even though it's not as bad as what the super climate nerds would, or not nerds, but super climate people would have you think, it is still bad. But imagine like we're introducing coral species. What if we don't get the blend right and we introduce invasive ones that end up destroying the natural ones that would have come back anyway? It's big responsibility comes with big risks, big rewards.
True that. True that. I think that's good for a good news roundup. I mean, we got some more stuff we can talk about next week. The heroic dog Rocky that alerts an Indian village of an oncoming landslide, saving dozens. That's cool. Okay, well, let's hit this one before we go today. So, lights were out in the mountain village of Siathi, northern India, but one resident clearly was not interested in going to sleep. Well past midnight on June 26th, Rocky the dog sat on the ground floor of a home in Himachal Pradesh states, barking and howling loudly. June being monsoon season in India, rain was teeming down, but Rocky's owner, Lalit Kumar, could hear the dog through his sleep and the weather. I was woken by my dog's strange barking as if he was trying to warn me, Lalit said. When I reached him, I saw a huge crack in the wall and water pouring in. Oh my God. An awful thing to find so late at night, but when Lalit went downstairs to wake the rest of his family, that's when he saw it. A wall of onrushing water and earth coming down the mountain towards the town. Oh my God. Grabbing the dog and his family, he ran along the streets, waking neighbors until 22 families had assembled and fled to high ground. Moments later, the landslide arrived and wrecked 12 out of 17 homes in the village in a wave of mud and debris. 67 people lived there in that little village, each and every one of them owing their lives to Rocky the dog, whom Kumar had gotten from his brother just 3 months before. Oh my God, good job, Rocky. You're the man.
And good job, Kumar's brother.
But amid incessant rains, flash floods, and landslides in Himachal Pradesh.
Dude, that's crazy that they could see it coming down the mountain. They still had just enough time to get away.
17 rain-related deaths. However, during the night tours in the village of Siathi, Dharampur, a dog saved as many as 67 lives in the district. The area was witnessing a massive downpour, but a dog sleeping on the second floor of Siathi resident Narendra's house suddenly started barking loudly and then howling around midnight. Shortly after the villagers took shelter, the village was hit by a landslide, flattening nearly a dozen houses. Today, only 4 to 5 houses are visible in the village. All others are under the debris from the landslide. Kameshwar, एक डॉग की बहादुरी की वजह से भी उसके सतर्क रहने की वजह से या कहेंगे
उसके So now I just switched to Hindi. Okay. Rock on, dudes.
Yeah, hey.
He's probably got like 5 more languages to get through, considering he's in India.
Right.
That's awesome, though, man. Go ahead, Rocky, dude. He just saved so many, 22 families, man. That's a lot of people. Good job, Rocky. You're the man. So that's been our Good News Roundup of the day, fam. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Meaning Making 101, where we try to make sense of this crazy, wild world together.
And sorry if we offended you, whether you're Christian or not, but we have to risk offense in order to think and get this right.
Amen to that, man.
And if
we're
you
just
think
trying
we're
to figure
wrong,
this thing out.
Put it in the comments. It would be awesome. Because, frankly, I don't other than Chris here, I don't really get to talk about any of this kind of stuff with really anybody else because it's just kind of people.
Yeah, we were totally.
I really don't want to talk about it, or don't you dare question what I think the Bible says.
Yeah, but we do want to talk about it, and I really hope that recapitulate an understanding of a relationship with the divine by talking about the way of being that Christ embodied for the world, we can actually invite and inspire more people to study the way of being that Christ exhibited for us. And rather than see so many people turned off of Christianity because of what the least among us have done in its name, these people that are failing at being Christians, calling themselves Christians, that are not truly Christians, doing horrifying things in the name of their religion, which you see all the world's religions, sadly, people that have done these things.
It's called taking the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah. I mean, there's sects of Buddhists, Buddhism that have gone really wild. It happens in everywhere. It happens in all religions. It's because it's a human problem. It's not the religion's problem. It's us. We're the greedy and the guilty and the shameful and the sinful and the ones that are not yet perfect. We were not born perfect angels. We're in the midst of our evolution, so it's okay. We are forgiven. We can forgive and have mercy, and we can perfect ourselves through the art of love. So let's find that stillness within, fam. Let's look at things from a non-dual lens that recognizes the inherent interconnection of all things. Let's recognize the oneness that we all share here together. God truly is living through all of us, all of our hearts, all of our minds, and he's given us the room to grow and co-create this world along with him. So let's do that thing. Love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Actualization Station and our weekly live stream series, Meaning Making 101. I've been Chris.
I've been DJ.
We will see you guys next time. Love y'all. Peace out. Let's dance our way on out of here.
Waiting for the drop.